Hello, guys. Good evening. I hope my voice is audible and the presentation is visible. Can somebody please confirm?
Yes, sir.
All right, Samar. Thank you so much. So, without wasting much of the time, because today I have to cover almost all the aspects of terrorism, including the Indian angle. So we'll straight away jump to the topic. Yesterday, I have given you an idea as to how international law aspects of terrorism and how United Nations, along with other states, they are trying to come up with various, solutions to the problem. But these are all the general conventions, which are where the outcome of the various consensus, the various deliberations of the various states. And as a result, we can see that we have as many as 19 international conventions, which directly or indirectly deals with the topic of terrorism in some way or the other. Some are directly related to the same, such as the Convention on the Suppression of the Bombings, while some are indirectly related. For example, the Convention on Suppression of the Financing of the Terrorism, that is the money laundering. So, excuse me. So, apart from these 19 international conventions, which I think many states are parties to the same. We also have some activities which have been going on from the end of General Assembly as well as the Security Council. So we will just briefly have a look, just a brief look as to what they have done till so far. Because as I told you yesterday, that at the start, it was believed that the Security Council will take a lead so far as the resolution of disputes and so far as the maintenance of international peace and security is concerned. However, uh, it could not be happened the way it was expected, and as a result, it was the General Assembly which had come forward with the resolution, and it was the General Assembly through its Secretary General. These two organs of the United Nations, they have worked tirelessly even for the topic of terrorism. So we'll briefly see what is the general resolutions are there. Then we'll jump to the human rights of terrorism, because there are always two aspects when it comes to terrorism. As I said, as we discussed yesterday, all of us, that there is a good side and the bad side of the same. However, one should not forget the humanity part while countering international or national terrorism so far. So we are going to have a look at some of the human rights also, and how human rights have been jeopardized at the time of terrorist activities, and how different states are coping with the same situations. Then we will go to the laws of UK. No, not sorry, not UK. The laws of the USA, because we'll see what happened exactly there after 9 and 11, and how successfully they have managed the situation, and not a single attack since you see 9/11 has happened of that gravity in the United States of America. So we will see and we will learn as to what they have done, what amendments they have done, which India could not do at its level. And we will then jump to Indian situation scenarios, laws of terrorism, and then we'll come to the conclusion. And then maybe we'll have a small discussion with all of you, right? So without wasting much time, let us talk about the General Assembly resolutions that were there. Then, if you can see, the General Assembly, I'm on to slide number 22, 2, 2, okay? So the General Assembly has arrived at a consensus resolution. It's titled the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy on in 2006. This became the focal document of the General Assembly to take and to deal with the topic of the terrorism. And additionally, there are as many as 70 resolutions since 2006, which have addressed the direct or different aspects of terrorism, including the protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms while countering terrorism. Then it also talks about the international cooperation to assist victims of terrorism. Now, one thing you must understand that there are hardly any laws which talks about the victims of the terrorism, and there are hardly any provisions for the compensation of the victims of the terrorism. So this resolution became one of the important aspects so far as victims of terrorism are concerned. And it also talked about the prevention of acquisition of by terrorists of radioactive materials. We have seen yesterday that there are two, three conventions which directly focuses on the protection and physical protection of the nuclear weapons. So this also 2006 resolution by General Assembly directly focuses on the same. Now I'm into slide number 23. This UN Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy mainly consisted of four pillars. Pillar one, addressing the conditions conducive to the spread of terrorism, that is to stop the spread of terrorism, to prevent and combat terrorism. Second, the third pillar talks about the building state's capacity to prevent and combat terrorism, and also to strengthen the United Nations role in this particular regard. Now, this is very much important pillar of this global strategy of the UN. That is, many of the states, they are very much poor and they don't have resources to deal or to prevent with the terrorism. For example, the states that are there in South Africa, they don't have the much resources and they lack capacity to, you see, deal with the situations like terrorism. So this is one of the highlighted point of the global strategy on of counterterrorism of the UN. Then the fourth pillar says that ensuring respect for human rights and the rule of law as the fundamental basis of the fight against terrorism. So at the same time, this strategy is also talking about the human rights and the rule of law to be upheld at the time when there are some terrorist activities. Then I'm going to slide number 24 and 25. 24 will here see briefly, and here we'll see the nature of the resolutions adopted by the Security Council, right? Then more than the General Assembly has attempted, Security Council has come up with so many resolutions, and same many of the resolutions they dealt with the particular situations in a particular location geographically, right? So please refer to slide number 25. The Security Council initially used its sanctions regime to address terrorism. So in international law, if some states are not following, then you have a solution at the Security Council. It is called sanctions, which means punishment. Suppose a state is not listening to the command of the international community, then sanctions or the punishments could be used against that particular state. So Security Council has successfully, you see, issued sanctions to address the problems of terrorism, such as the 1999 adoption of Resolution 1267 and 1269, which was mainly aimed at the Taliban in Afghanistan and later Al Qaeda and related groups. But I think this was too late for them to do that. Then subsequently, security resolutions such as 1373, 1540, 1624 has strengthened further the legal framework of preventing and combating terrorism. And since 2013, Security Council has enacted further resolutions, often invoking Part 7 to address new types of terrorist threat. These includes the resolution number 2133, which was issued in the year 2014, and which addressed the issue of kidnapping and hostage taking by terrorists, and resolution 2170, which was again belonged to the year 2014, address on suppressing the flow of foreign terrorist fighters. Then this FTT in the year 2014 was the new concept in the terrorism, because it means foreign terrorist fighters. And please remember, this was the time when the Arab Spring was going on, wherein there was much revolution in the Arabian country, most particularly Libya. And Libya literally lost the battle with the US and the other states. And as a result, so many fighters, those who were there from Libya side, they flee with Libya, and they joined another countries fighting groups such as Syria, because Syria was also one of the you see important aspect in this period, and such as FTT, FTFs, financing and other support terrorist groups in Iraq and Syria. You see, now you have to understand one thing, that the year, or rather the period in between 2001 to 2003-4, that belongs to the anti-terrorism activities, which were focused mainly in Afghanistan. 2003 to further, let's say up to 2008 or 9, this period was focused on the Iraq. And after 2012 and 13, that is after the Arab Spring, the focus of entire world of the terrorist activities, they have focused it to the Syria, right? So many fighters, even from Afghanistan and Pakistan, they have went to Syria and joined the forces of ISIS. And that's the reason this period becomes very important. And that's the reason again as to why there are so many Security Council resolutions which are passed focusing on some of the important areas. Now I come to slide number uh, slide number 27, please. Okay, and these are the additional Security Councils again, which were addressed for the first time to counter the violent extremism which was conducive to terrorism. Resolution 2195 called for international action to prevent terrorists from benefiting from transnational organized crime. Now, you also have to understand one thing here very carefully. Often, organized crime which has been committed in or in targeted in several specific geographical areas, for example, India, Asia, or someplace, they have the closest nexus to the terrorist activities. They are always found to be connected with the terrorist activities. So, this 2195 resolution was aimed to target both the organized crime as well as the international terrorism which was going on. And similarly, in 2015, the Security Council adopted 2199 resolution, which aimed to prevent terrorist groups in Iraq and Syria from benefiting in trade in oil, antiquities, and hostages, and from receiving donations. So it prevented many other states to help out these groups from taking benefits of trade in oil, antiquities, and hostage. Now you see, from so many sources, the money goes to these terrorist organizations. And in no way you can see that these are the poor people which are fighting for certain cause, right? They somehow or the other, sooner or the later, they do manage to get the sources, the fundings from other sympathizers, and they do manage to concentrate their attacks, right? So this is one of the aspects. So they may be benefited from trading in oil, antiquities, drugs, as we have seen yesterday, and also by other kind of business activities which are closely related to organized crime again. Then in the year 2015 again, resolution number 2242 outlined the sweeping actions to improve implementation of its landmark women, peace and security agenda, covering its work on counterterrorism, violent extremism, conducive to terrorism. And in another resolution called name number 2253, Security Council expanded and strengthened its Al Qaeda sanctions, and it has established its focus on the Islamic State of Iraq and the Lebanon, that is ISIS again. And as I've told you before, that all these resolutions of 2014, 13, they are all focused in one area only, that is ISIS, and sometimes it is Al Qaeda. And but remember, the area of the operation of the Security Council resolution are uh, are in the Middle East, or the place of Al Qaeda as well as the ISIS as to where exactly they're working. Now, please refer to slide number 28 again. Here are some more uh, resolutions of the Security Council. Again, in 2017, Security Council uh, outlined new measures to protect critical infrastructure. And while another resolution focused on countering terrorist narratives. Then in 2007, again, resolution 2370 focused on strengthening the measures to prevent terrorists from acquiring weapons, while another resolution, it addressed the accountability of crimes committed by ISIL in Iraq. But these are only, let me tell you, some of these resolutions have actually worked, and some of them are mere, you see, theoretical. It was very much difficult to carry out or enforce the resolutions there in the practice. Then again, 2388 resolution of Security Council focused on disrupting human trafficking, which was carried out by the terrorist groups. Now you see, the ISIS uh, came out to be one of the deadliest you see terrorist groups. And if you are an IS member and you have done well, then you will get good gifts from the superiors or the superior commanders. And these gifts may be in the form of women and children and men, small men, which means if you have done good job, then you may be rewarded with the good women. And that's why human trafficking was becoming one of the important concern of the international community, because many women they've been kidnapped and hijacked and taken to Syria and were subjected to abuse and atrocities by the members of these ISIS. So this became very much you see important under international law in the states, and that's why this resolution deals with the same. Then another resolution of UN Security Council number 2396, which was again belonged to the year 2017. It addressed the evolving threat from foreign terrorist fighters, as we have seen before, through the measures of the border security and information sharing and criminal justice. Now you see the people, those who are involved in the border security, though there exists the UN peacekeeping force in Syria, in Iraq, but at the ground level, these people or these people rather are the sympathizer of these fighters only, one way or the other. And as a result, it was felt need to improve or enhance border security, information sharing, and to also ensure criminal justice system. That's why this resolution was needed. Then it also updated some of its own resolutions, which were focused on ISIL and Al Qaeda sanctions regimes, and renewed the mandate of Counterterrorism Committee, Executive Directorate for a further 4 years, United Nations Office of Counterterrorism. Okay, so these are the ways as to how Security Council actually works. Then please refer to slide number 29. Okay, slide number 29. Then here are some more Security Council resolutions which called for enhanced international efforts to combat and criminalizing the financing of terrorist activities. Once again, financing of terrorist activities become very much important, and that's why this resolution. Then further, 2019 resolution requested continued efforts to address the issue of trafficking in person and its link with sexual violence in conflict and post-conflict situations committed by the terrorist group. Again, you see the human trafficking is often connected with the sexual violence, which may or may have been committed in the conflict and the post-conflict situations, right, by the terrorists. Then again, Resolution 2482 of 2019 focused on strengthening a global response to linkages between international terrorism and organized crime. See, and there are some other key United Nations bodies such as ECOSOC, Human Rights Council, which have also contributed to the you see UN organization work on counterterrorism is concerned. Okay, now these are several contemporary challenges. Please refer to slide number 30. These are some of the contemporary challenges that we face even today's world, even now. Then, following the loss of territorial control by Islamic State in Iraq, that is ISIL, in Syria in March 2019, ISIL has reconstituted itself as a covert network in Syria again, as happened uh, after its loss of territorial control in Iraq in 2017. So again, in the situation as of 2019, these ISIS, they are again reconstituting themselves, and they are you see inviting new members and begin new membership programs in the Syria. Then this actually remains a greatest challenge, and these shifted to the use of insurgent tactics with attacks, which continues across the different parts of the country, that is focused again on Syria and Iraq. Then we have complex security, legal, humanitarian, human rights, political, and social economic challenges to ensure accountability for terrorist crimes, to upholding the rights of the victims, rehabilitating the areas, and addressing the situation of thousand men, women, and children with suspected links to terrorist groups currently in the camps and detention facilities, including foreign terrorist fighters. So there are some people, those who remain in refugee camp under the United Nations, and they are the informers of these terrorist groups. So these are the recent challenges which United Nations Committee and you see the people, all those involved in dealing with or countering with the terrorism problem in these conflicted areas that are there. Okay. Then we will see to this further slide number 31 little later. Please come to slide number 33. Yes, you have in your syllabus something called terrorism and human rights. So it may be asked for short answers, short marks. So here is the things which you have to write. No matter how, no matter what, but the terrorists are required or entitled to the following rights: right to life, right to torture, right to have a fair trial and due process, the right to non discrimination, the right against transfer of individuals suspected of terrorist activities. Now, all these rights must be available to the person if you are designating him or her as a terrorist. Now, yesterday we have seen that it is very much difficult to define a terrorism, but no matter what kind of individual you are trying, every individual must get these rights. You cannot try him or you cannot detain him without making available these rights. So we'll see one by one very briefly, and then we'll straight away jump to the US situations, right? So right to life, I need not tell you much about the same because we have you already know, and by virtue of Article 21 of the Constitution, which already prescribes that no person shall be deprived of his life and personal liberty except according to the procedures established by law. So also the UN Human Rights Committee has stated that protection against the deprivation of life is of paramount importance. So there should not be any deliberate target or shoot to kill orders so far as these terrorists are concerned. So right to life becomes a very fundamental condition precedent right available to the terrorists. Please refer to slide number 35. Then the High Commissioner for Human Rights has cautioned that in the fight against terrorism, law enforcement machinery should instill a culture of respect for the law, above all, and extreme vigilance. This is what has something has been said. Then this is most important right, and this is the most violated right by the state all the time. Under international law, it's a parently norm that uh, this is a non-derogable right, that is right against torture. Okay, so the Human Rights Committee has confirmed that this right is to be protected all the time, including a state of emergency. And thus, in order to provide justice to terrorists, states must ensure that the full range of legal and practical standards to prevent torture in such cases. But let me tell you, sorry, excuse me. But let me tell you practically, these rights, though they are there in the paper, but these rights are very much difficult to, you see, enforce in the real practice. Why? Because only the prosecutors, only the people, those who are investigating the terrorist cases, they know what kind of, you see, torture they themselves have to go through first before they torture these criminals or the terrorists, right? So this, but yes, there is this right available on the paper. Okay. Then please refer to slide number 37. This is the right to fair trial and due process. We have from our trial of Ajmal Amir Kasab, we have proved to the world that we had conducted the right and fair trial, which was according to the due process. Our tribunal was impartial. Even Supreme Court, the case went on to the Supreme Court. Appeal went on to the Supreme Court, and as you are well aware, that the Supreme Court has given the judgment in the same. So, right to fair trial and due process must be available. This is yet another human right that must be applicable or available to the terrorists. Then, please come to slide number 38. This is one of the important rights. Actually, this was not a popular right, but after 9 and 11, the right against transfer of individuals suspected of terrorist activities, which means authorities in the US, they could arrest a person and they could, you see, transfer individuals from one jurisdiction to another. For example, the laws in the US, they prevented any strict scrutiny of these terrorists, and that's the reason the authorities, they have established their base somewhere outside the country. Like Guantanamo is very much famous. I'm sure that you must have heard about this. So it says that states have an obligation to conduct any transfer of detainees in the manner which is transparent and consistent with the human rights and the rule of law, including the right to respect for a person's inherent dignity, the right of everyone to recognition before law, and the right to due process. So people started disappearing. People, those who were suspected of any connection to the terrorism, they started disappearing. And that's the reason it was very much important for the US to bring about some awareness before the state authority and before the courts that these rights should be made available to the individuals, right? Article 3 of the Convention Against Torture, it speaks about the same right. Article 33 of the 1951 Refugee Convention speaks about the same right. And Article 716 of the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance, it also talks about the same right. Then Article 17 of the International Convention, once again, it talks about the similar kind of right. Okay. Then please refer to slide number 39. All right, this is not important. Please go to slide number. I think this has been repeated. I'm sorry. All these slides have been repeated. Just hang on for a second, guys. Okay. I request you all to please come to slide number 47. Am I audible, my dear students? Can somebody please just verify once again?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you so much. Then you have in your syllabus something called terrorism and the USA. Now, terrorism and the laws in the USA, they have the subject itself is very much vast, but I'll try my best to cover the subject in no time, right? So, these are the laws that are available so far as combating terrorism in the United States of America is concerned, and this is very much important. You can learn much. We can learn so much from the legal regime that they have built after the 9/11 and before it was said. Then we have Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act 1996, Executive Order 1322-4. Then we have USA Patriot Act, which is popularly known as Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools for Intercepting and Obstructing Terrorism Act 2001, which was amended in March 2006 again. Then you have Homeland Security Act of 2002. Then we have Support Anti-Terrorism by Foster Effective Technology Act, that is called Safety Act of 2002. Then we have Border Protection Anti-Terrorism Illegal Immigration Control Act of 2005. They also have Real ID Act of 2005. And most importantly and most controversial, they also have, apart from USA Patriot Act, one more act which is called as United States Military Commission Act of 2006, which was also being challenged in the United States of America, American courts. Okay, then we'll see one by one what these exactly provisions are. Uh, Following the Oklahoma City bombings, the Congress and the UN, they signed an act called Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act on April 24, 1996. This mainly dealt with the habeas corpus, and this act has a tremendous impact on the law of habeas corpus in the US. Certain rights were being curtailed, and one provision of the this ADPA Act is limits the power of federal judges to grant relief unless the state court's adjudication of the claim resulted in the decision that was contrary or involved as unreasonable application of clearly established federal law, as determined by the Supreme Court of the US. And second, based on the unreasonable determination of both the right of the evidence presented in the state court. So this law indirectly, you see, created hurdles for the federal judges whenever it comes to the habeas corpus cases, right? Habeas corpus means bring the body. So they have put some restrictions on the judges so far as granting reliefs are concerned in these cases by tying their hands by these two conditions. And they said that law and enforcement authorities must require some liberty when it comes to questioning of the offenders or the terrorists are concerned. Okay, so this was just one act. Then we have most draconianly known this executive order 13224 right after the 9 and 11 attack. It is an executive order signed by former US President George W. Bush on 23rd September as a response to the 9 and 11 attack. This order provides a means by which to disrupt the financial support network for terrorists and terrorist organizations by authorizing the US government to designate and block assets of foreign individuals and entities that commit or pose a significant risk of committing acts of terrorism. Now, here I want you to focus that. Please read the second paragraph of slide 49, which says that this is the order which provide means by which to disrupt the financial flow network for the terrorists that may have come in. Now, this mechanism, Indian authorities have almost failed to implement. We have no, we have no system to monitor or which will designate and block the assets of foreign individuals that is coming to our country, and that may pose a significant thing. And in India, Hawala is very much known for, and as a result, many of the money that comes from Hawala goes into for the terrorist causes once again. So this is one of the reasons as to where India should focus, learning from Executive Order 13224. Then we have the Office of the Foreign Assets Control by virtue of this executive order, which was established of the US Treasury, which administers and enforces economic and trade sanctions based on the US foreign policy, national security goal against foreign country terrorists, economic narcotic traffickers, and those engaged in activities related to the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. So not only financing, they are also talking about the narcotic traffickers, that is the drug traffickers, the drug mafias, and also the movement of the weapons of mass weapon destruction. This was done right after, you see, just in 10 days by the US President. Can you believe? Now, I request you to please come to slide number 50. Then this is what the most controversial act which has been established. It's called USA Patriot Act, and it stands for Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools for Intercepting and Obstructing Terrorism 2001, which is also known as popularly, famously, or infamously rather, USA Patriot Act. This is considered to be one of the draconian legislations which had come up or which has been delivered by the United States as a response to the terrorism. Then, at the first, the Patriot Act, without wasting much time, it had made amendments to the following acts that were there in existence that time, at the time the 9 and 11 happened. Now, please pay attention to the names of that, and you please see as to whether we have made any amendment to the same, because India has NSA, NSA as an act, we have UAPA, and we have, I think, yes, it's NIA Act of 2000 after 2611. Now, USA, right after the 9 and 11, they have amended these acts, right? Number one, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act 1978. It's called FISA. Then the second, Electronic Communication Privacy Acts of 1986. Privacy Acts, remember. The Money Laundering Control Act of 1986. The Bank Secrecy Act, that is, they must know as to from where the money is coming. That's why the Bank Secrecy Act. And last not the least, the Immigration and National Act. Immigration, why? Because there were defaults at the time when this terrorist attack happened, and they wanted to make immigration laws very much stricter, because you see, attack happened in the first place because of the fault in the immigration process, right? They could not be the suspects could not be identified well before in hand, right? That's the reason all these five acts were being amended. Now we will see some of the important highlighted provisions, and then we'll go ahead. Please, please come to slide number 51, 5.1. Okay. These are some of the key provisions of the USA Patriot Act. Title 1 of the same deals with the enhancing domestic security against terrorism. It established a fund for counter-terrorist activities and increased the funding for FBI's technical support. FBI is one of the, you see, local intelligence gathering machinery, like our CBI, there in US. Then military was authorized to provide assistance in some situations that may have involved the weapons of mass destruction when so requested by the Attorney General. Then the National Electronic Crime Task Force was expanded along with the President's authority and abilities in cases of terrorism. Now we please come to slide number 52. Title 2 deals with the enhanced surveillance procedure. And as we have seen already, it covers all aspects of surveillance of suspected terrorism. So remember, a terrorist cannot claim the right to privacy when it comes to terrorist activities, right? So they have amended the laws so far as surveillance of suspected people are concerned. Those who are involved in computer fraud, abuse, and agents of foreign power, etc., etc. It also made amendments in FISA, as we have said, and also the Electronic Communication Privacy Act. This allows the government agencies to gather foreign intelligence officer information from both US and non-US citizens and change FISA to make, you see, foreign information the significant purpose of the FISA-based surveillance, right? So intelligence sharing became one of the most important facets of countering terrorism right after when the terrorist attack happened in the US. Okay, then Title 3 of the same dealt with the anti-money laundering to prevent terrorism. It talks about, it amended the portion of Money Laundering Control Act and also the Bank Secrecy Act, as we have seen already. Now, please come to slide number 54. Yes. Then Title 4 of the same act deals with the amendment of the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952, and to give more law enforcement and investigative power to the US Attorney General, and to the Immigration Naturalization Services, right? So these are the areas this act mainly focused. Please come to slide number 55. This act also cared about the victims. Title 6 of the act deals with the victims and the families of the victims of terrorism. Changes were made to the Victims of Crime Act of 1984 to improve the speedy provision of aid to families of public safety officers by expedited payments to officers or the family of the officers. Then, under the changes, payments must be made no later than 30 days. In India, I'm afraid whether we do have some provisions like that. Then come to slide number 56. This is the Title 7, and which deals with the terrorism criminal law. This refers to the definition of terrorism and establish and redefines rules to deal with the same. It redefined domestic terrorism to broadly include mass destruction as well as assassination, kidnapping as terrorist activity or motive. Please focus on the word kidnapping. Even kidnapping has been used, can be used as a motive of terrorist activity. This is significant amendments which were being made in this particular aspect, right? Mm, Then please pay attention in the last line, which says that the terrorism also included in the definition of racketeering. The term also relates to cyber terrorism and so on, right? So they have expanded the term like anything. Now please come to slide number 57. Then this is another act that was there, Homeland Security Act of 2002, introduced in the aftermath of 2001 attacks. and created the US Department of Homeland Security in the largest federal government reorganization. And it includes many of the other organizations under which the powers of the USA Patriot Act are exercised. Now, please refer to slide number 58, my dear students. This is called as Safety Act, Fostering Effective Technology Act. They have immediately amended this particular act, and it's a provision of the Homeland Security Act, groundbreaking legislation that provided for broad tort reform to encourage development of safe, effective anti-terrorism products and service critical to the national security. You see, by virtue of just one act, how many amendments have been made. Then come to slide 59. They also had border uh, protection, anti-terrorism, and illegal immigration control act of 2005, and among several border protections, illegal immigration provisions, they also laid down provisions prohibiting aid to illegal people, which means if you are a national of the US and if you are helping somebody else coming to the within the US border, then you will also be liable. And that's the second line, exactly what it says. It will be crime to assist an illegal person to remain in the United States, knowing or reckless disregard of the fact that such person is an alien who lacks lawful authority to reside or remain in the United States. So, Border Protection Act amendments have also been made. Please come to slide number 60. Then the provisions amendments were also made to the Real ID Act. This was an identification. This was an act relating to identification. Please come to slide number 61. Then yes, this was the most controversial act which was being there in the United States. It's called United States Military Commission Act of 2006. Is also known as HR 6166. It was an act drafted by Congress in the wake of Supreme Court's decision on Hamdan versus Rumsfeld, and act's purpose was to authorize trial by military commission for violation of law of war and for other purposes. Then this was one of the draconian provisions or law or legislation passed by the US Congress because mere on the suspicion of terrorist activity, military commission could try a particular suspect without any kind of further evidence, and it made the president as the supreme military commander, and which means president was authorized to establish these small summary military commissions. We will see exactly what happened. Please come to slide number 62. Okay, then the Military Commission Act, it laid down inapplicability of certain provisions. It said that following provisions shall not be applied by military. That is Article 10 of the uniform. It's not relevant, please. Please come to next slide. Uh, Slide number 63. Now, here what is important part of uh, this act comes. It says that any alien, unlawful enemy combatant is subjected to trial by military commission under Chapter 47A. The term unlawful military enemy combatant means a person who has engaged in hostilities or who has purposefully or materially supported hostilities against the United States or its co-belligerents, who is not a lawful enemy combatant, including a person who is a part of the Taliban or Al Qaeda or associate forces, or a person who, before or on or after the date of enactment of this law, has been determined to be the unlawful enemy combatant by a combatant status review tribunal and another competent tribunal established under the authority of the president. So, this combatant status review tribunal, they could designate anybody as an enemy combatant and they could try the person by military commission, which was way in contravention of the various human rights that were there, right? So these are the further explanation of the term. Uh, then please come to slide number 66, my dear students. Slide number 66. Am I audible once again? Just to clarify. Just to clarify. Can somebody please clarify?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes. We have just All right, we just have 12 minutes and 10 minutes, I guess, and we should. I think
Sir,
yeah.
so can we continue this thing tomorrow because I think it's a bit lengthy today. Topic.
Okay, no problem. But I actually wanted to finish this US part at least today, so that you see we could have an Indian part tomorrow. Actually, I wanted to finish today only. But anyway, as you are saying, we can continue tomorrow. We will see Judish because we still have 30 more slides. So I'm not sure whether we can go further. Okay, request accepted. Thank you so much, guys. Any questions so far? So you can see how much vigilant the law authorities and even the people, and how much angry were the people of the United States, and how hastily they have made the changes in their legal regime, so that nobody could challenge legally to whatever has been done to prevent any kind of terrorist activities in the US. Right? This in India we could do, or we could replicate the same, but the moment we gonna do that, many people will protest. Opposition will start protest without no point, right? So this is the problem with Indians. Any questions so far?
No, sir, it's clear.
Sahil, for you it's always clear. Let us know from other people because you are so much intelligent. No questions, guys. Thank you so much. Then I'll see you tomorrow. And I'm so sorry because I was speaking so monotonously because these were the legal provisions that I had to cover for you guys. So I'm so sorry. Can somebody play a song on their mobile of their choice for me today? Because I cannot find any song for you guys. Or other people's, those who are not interested, they can just leave.
Okay, sir.
Sahil, can you Sahil,
Yes,
can you play a song? Any
yes,
Bollywood or Hollywood, or I appreciate.
yes.
Play the song which should be liked by the guys, okay? Because we have more guys attending my classes than the girls, I guess.
तुझे देखता हूँ तो लगता है जैसे मुझको खुदा मिल गया
Wow, it's a great song.
तुझे देखता हूँ तो लगता है जैसे मुझको खुदा मिल गया धड़कन को मेरी अब जिंदगी का जैसे पता मिल गया जनता